Hello entrepreneurs, I'm Michael Mort, I'm the founder of Argent Law, and welcome to Argent Talks, where we have conversations with industry leaders to help you get a handle on how you convert your ideas into wealth. Today I'm happy to have with me Jonathan Lang, who supports independent contractors for government contracting work, and he has an extensive background for helping people do this, and we're going to just dive right into it. So, first of all, I want you to give me a welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Hello.
Thanks for participating. I want you to give us a brief overview of how you got into this business of helping contractors, government contractors.
For many years, I was the owner of a company that built workstations for the military, sold that business, and started helping other small businesses. And so I've been in the government contracting arena for over 30 years.
All in Northern Virginia.
Most in Northern Virginia, although for a period of time I had a sensor company in Florida and built fiber optic sensors, which I also sold to the government, both state and local and federal government. So
your background of success hopefully translates into helping your clients be
I
successful.
hope that I help clients avoid some of the mistakes that I have made over the years.
Right. Now, as I understand, one of the key aspects of your consulting business is to help people get certifications. So I know about a couple of them, like 8A and HubZone. Can you describe what are the different certifications?
Sure. In the government contracting arena, a substantial portion of the small business contracts are awarded to companies that get preferences due to their socioeconomic status. Now, the certifications that you can get for these businesses include 8A, which is a minority disadvantaged and socially and economically disadvantaged status. You can get a HubZone preference based on where your company is located. You can get a service disabled preference if you're a retired military who is disabled. You can also get a woman-owned business certification. There's kind of a hierarchy of how useful these are. The 8A preference allows you to win contracts sole source with the government, while the others just limit the competition.
Okay, so the only one that allows you to get sole source is an 8A certification.
That is correct. And even within the 8A, the sole source is better for the American Indian and American Native corporations than it is for any other 8As. Mm-hmm. They don't have the ceiling that the smaller companies have.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about the process of getting certified.
Okay. To get certified, you need to have been in business 2 years. Now, there are exceptions, but you need to have 2 years of financial records. You need to generally show that you can manage a business, so you need to show personal experience. The certification process actually is really in two parts. The individual who is disadvantaged, who has to be a 51% owner or greater of the business, and then the business itself needs to go through a certification process. The individual has to show that they don't have net worth over $250,000 when they enter the program.
That's personal net worth.
Personal net worth. That does not include their 401k, their personal residence, or money that is actually in the business used for the business.
Okay, so the business assets themselves don't go towards the...
that is correct.
Personal net worth, okay.
And then the business itself, it has to have shown some track record of success, enough that it will pass what we call the viability test, and that's the 2 years. I like to see a business that at least is breaking even and has revenues of approximately $100,000 per year. That is more of a subjective thing, while the personal net worth test is an objective thing. And the subjective thing with the business is it growing? Will it be here 3 years from now? Mm-hmm. So if you have revenue, I've actually gotten an approved company that had revenues of 40-something thousand 1 year, and then the second year it was maybe 120, and that was acceptable to the SBA.
Mm-hmm. Now, speak to us a little bit about women-owned businesses. I think there's actually there are federal certifications and state certifications.
Okay, a quick aside here. the SWAM certification, for example, is the women-owned and minority-owned business in the state of Virginia, is a certification process you can get. I deal mostly with the federal arena, mainly because the amount of dollars is probably 3 or 4 orders of magnitude greater in the federal arena than the state. I mean, contracts are in the hundreds of thousands and millions in the federal arena, where most of the local government and state government buys are much smaller. The process in the federal arena is fairly straightforward. It's online. After you've done the online application, you follow with your documentation. It typically takes, I tell clients, 3 to 5 months from the time you start the process to the time you are certified.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I want to move on to some other things I know you work on. You mentioned to me in an aside that you also work on assistance in helping write proposals.
I do get called in oftentimes in the capture process, helping to put together teams, and in the writing the proposals, I frequently am engaged in doing cost. It's an area that I've kind of gotten used to doing over the years, knowing what will win and what won't win.
Mm-hmm.
I have served on a review panel for a Navy agency where I was on the inside, where I evaluated proposals coming in. So it's given me an insight into what works and doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. So do you end up working then with companies' accountants to try to put together the...
Sometimes the accountants are involved. Unfortunately, most of the small businesses don't engage their accountants to assist very much in doing their proposals. The nature of it is that the small business typically use their accountants just to do their books.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the accountants that are engaged by the small businesses are not that experienced in doing the submittals for cost proposals for federal government contracts.
Yeah. So in a previous life, I had my own software company, and one of the things we did was to use government contracts, and particularly SBIRs, to get the company launched. And I have to admit that I tried to do all that cost accounting stuff myself to try and get things going. Like many small business owners, you try to do everything yourself, but you don't do as well as you should. It's really better to hire somebody that's expert at that.
I do offer assistance in doing SBIRs. My company that built workstations for the military, we were funded to a large extent the first 3 or 4 years by Small Business Innovative Research grants.
Uh-huh.
So I'm familiar with that process.
Now, something that's near and dear to my heart is contracting. So you get, your clients might likely be subcontractors. They might think about being primes on a contract. Tell us the difference between the primes, the subcontractors, what they should be looking out for.
The subcontractor has the same responsibilities as the prime contractor because there is a flow down. They have to be concerned about potential audits. They have to be concerned with doing the right thing, whatever is legally correct. They're responsible for following the federal acquisition regulations. But the difference is the prime contractor usually, after award, insulates a subcontractor from the government so that the prime wants to handle everything with the customer. Now, what does this do? It puts cost pressure on the subcontractor because the subcontractor will never get the program management higher rates. They're going to get the lower level positions. They're going to get squeezed when the government wants to save a few dollars. They go to the prime will squeeze the subcontractor. It's very important as a subcontractor to try to maintain visibility with the end user client because especially if you're an 8A company, there's going to be a point when you want to break out from being underneath that prime contractor and make that relationship with the government count so that you can get your own prime contract. So basically, you're at the beck and call of the prime, and you're going to be constantly fighting the issue of they don't want you to talk to the government. Now, the government has the right to talk to you as a subcontractor at any time. And in fact, a lot of government procurement people don't have a problem with having the sub talk to them. The problem is the prime in between.
Right. And I suppose that relationship is governed by the specifics of the contract between the prime and the subcontractor.
It is governed somewhat by the specifics, but I'd say more so by the personalities of the people.
Okay.
Because I have seen instances where the prime will say, hey, you're free to talk to the government people as much as you need to, go right ahead. And in fact, sometimes I've seen primes help the sub get business directly.
Mm.
Unusual, but it does happen.
Mm-hmm. So you, obviously, as a subcontractor, you would be looking for primes that have that kind of collegial you want to have that kind of collegial
Absolutely.
relationship. Yeah. And so I'm thinking that this prime can't possibly keep the conversation between the customer and the sub from not happening unless that's written into their contract with the sub.
I haven't seen that explicitly written into contracts.
Okay, so if it's not written into contracts, then
It's not.
It's basically just the what you can negotiate with your prime.
Right. It's usually verbal.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that the government person would frown on seeing stuff written in there that prevents open communication from all the subs.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets worse even if you are a second or third tier sub. You are a sub to a sub who is to the prime. It gets even harder to maintain that visibility.
Right. But we actually kind of put the cart before the horse in the sense that in order to get to a contract with the government, you usually have to go through a bid process, and there'll be some kind of a teaming agreement.
Teaming agreement.
So let's talk about the differences between the teaming agreement and the actual subcontract.
Teaming agreements, a major focus for the subcontractor will be what amount of the work, if it's awarded, will I get?
Mm.
In the case of an 8A, you must have 51% if you're the prime. But if you're a sub to one of the big companies, you really have to push hard to get your 5 people, 3 people, 10%, whatever it may be. And that usually is a source of a little bit of friction in the original negotiation of the teaming agreement. Because oftentimes the big player is using you because first they want to get credit for using a sub, using an 8A, using a woman-owned business. But second, there may be a specific skill area that you have that they want the resumes of your people or your past performance to satisfy something. And what you don't want to have happen is they use your people, they use your resumes, they use your past performance, and then the prime gets awarded the contract and they give you one body out of maybe 30.
Oh, they're using your resumes in order to get the work, and once they get they win the project.
That's
then
correct.
they don't end up using.
So it's very important to negotiate a teaming agreement that puts a minimum on the amount that you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would think another problem that you might run into as a subcontractor is that the prime might try to steal your people.
Usually there's an agreement that the no-steal agreement between the prime and the sub,
Right.
both ways.
So you have to
That's
make
usually
sure
in the
that's written
teaming
into
agreement.
the
And I'm
contract.
sure that as a legal professional, you advise people on how to put that in there effectively.
Right, right. Well, that's all. This is great. Now, I wanted to know what other professionals you bring in to help the subcontractors. I'm hoping you'll say, "Oh, yeah, I bring in a lawyer." But obviously, what else would? What other
I
professionals?
frequently do bring in professionals like a lawyer, as we have talked before. If there's intellectual property issues, which
Mhm.
frequently come up if you're doing SBIR proposals, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
or if there's software being developed for a particular program, and maybe a subcontractor has already done a little bit of it on their own, so they want to protect their property.
Right.
I have oftentimes brought in accountants. If it's a new business, a young business, they don't have proper indirect costing, so they got to set up their books so that they can get through a DCAA, Defense Contract Audit Agency audit. So I would bring in accountants. Occasionally, I bring in experts in security or what I would call the FISMA compliance. We've run into this a number of times.
What's FISMA stand for?
Federal Industrial Security.
Okay. Management. Maybe.
Management. So there's a set of rules that the agencies have to follow to make
Mhm.
sure that their systems are secure.
Mhm.
So a lot of the proposals these days, just in the last 2 years, require that you show how you're going to be FISMA compliant.
Okay, and finally, with all these certified companies running around, I understand there's a way of graduating from the program, whether you're prepared or not. Tell us about that to finish up.
Well, you can be graduated against your will. Often happens if your revenue gets too big, you don't satisfy the small business requirements,
Mm.
so you can be graduated from the 8A program. If you don't get a certain amount of commercial business, when you hit the 7th year of your 9-year program, they can prevent you from getting additional 8A work, effectively graduating you, although you're still in the program, but you're prevented from getting additional work.
So in addition to having government contract work, in
You're
order to keep
supposed
your
to
8A
move.
certification, you need some commercial
You need
work.
to move towards doing things commercially, start that movement in the 5th and 6th years.
Mhm. That's a great way of transitioning your product or service from government contracting to commercial, but also basically diversifying your product offering.
That's true.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, a lot of people that are successful 8As, they figure, hey, I've done very well. What I'll do is I will set up a friend of mine or a cousin,
Mm.
and they become a subcontractor to that new company that takes over the work. In fact, the flipping the 8A contract is very common in the industry.
Mm.
It's kept among friends. But that's okay. The agency is familiar with the people that have been working as a sub, and they want to keep the same people on the job.
Mhm.
It's just that legally they can't have the same business.
Right. But it's probably better for the company in order to expand farther to think beyond the 8A certification.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming. Any other final comments you want to make for us?
Well, I would encourage people to develop product and service which is unique.
Mm-hmm.
And the major thing when you're marketing to the government is you want to show how you are different. You don't want to just be me too like everybody else. And that's one of the problems that a lot of small businesses run into,
Mm-hmm.
differentiating themselves.
Right. So it all boils down to having an idea. Having an idea, then protecting the idea, then moving forward with that idea. Whether you're women-owned or minority-owned or majority-owned, if we will, business, the grist of business is ideas. And then you come in to help them with the specifics of bringing that idea to the market.
Yes.
Great. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate Jonathan Lang coming in to talk to us at Argent Talks. Tell us how we get a hold of you if we need to engage your services. What's your website? What's your phone number?
I can be reached at 703-407-3535. That's my cell phone. Or email jonathanlang@verizon.net.
Okay, super, Jonathan. So Argent Place Law is a business law firm concentrating on helping entrepreneurs take their ideas to wealth. And we're pleased to have Jonathan Lang talk to us today. We look forward to seeing you again next time we have Argent Talks.